This is an overview video on how to replace the hose of a Shark vacuum. Not every model is the same, but this is on my particular model. And this is the hose that is between the floor nozzle and the main unit. It's about a 6-inch hose. And they tend to crack over time and you lose suction. So I'm going to just give you an overview. I'm not going to go into the details because there's a lot of intricate mechanical mechanisms that you have to deal with. And if you're not mechanically inclined, I do not recommend this task, especially if you're going to adapt it the way I am. Let's talk about the hose first. So if you're going to look, there's some pieces of the old hose. If you were to look at the bottom, look at this hose, you see, that's the one I replaced. And it's flexible. So you can say, okay, wow, you just replaced that hose. Not so easy. When I called Shark, they wouldn't sell me just that hose. They wanted me to buy for $219 this whole lower unit, I was outraged. I told them, you know, they got to be crazy. I'm not going to ever buy a Shark again if you can't replace parts like this, like a $2 part. So my wife wanted to go out and buy a new one. I said, hold on there, Bob Louie. I said, I could fix it. She's rolling her eyes. So I pulled out the old Shark we had, the one before this, and I never throw anything away, and I had this in my junk area. And sure enough, I saw a hose there. I said, okay, I'll cut that hose off and I'll just replace that. Well, when I got it out, it turns out this hose is a little bigger than the hose that was originally in there, like this. But I found that these will adapt. Right there, I could screw this in. And it's counterclockwise. It's reverse thread, so you got to turn it counterclockwise to thread in. And I said, oh well, I'll just cut the old piece that's not cracked, screw that in both pieces, cut this to length, and replace that. And it worked, but I had to tear this apart more because of that. So what you're seeing is a hose that's a little bit bigger. It still fit with my adapters that I made from the old piece of hose, which was totally cracked, and you know that's why there's only pieces that's left over. And I got plenty of this stuff left over. I can make hoses every time this breaks, and now that I know how to do it, it won't take long. But let's talk about it. You know, you're going to have to take apart this whole bottom unit. You remember these 3 screws that you put like a nickel in, and you turn it to the left a quarter of a turn. We'll take off this plate. It's hard to see here. And that, those of you who have the Shark know you take that plate off, and that's how you can get into this tube here in case it clogs, or to get into the brushes. Okay, so you would take that off. There's a whole bunch of screws. If this plate does not pop off easily, if it doesn't pop off easily, you have missed a screw somewhere, and you got to loosen it up. So that is pretty much straightforward in there. In there, you're going to find this little tube ends in a plastic nozzle, and you can see that you have to pull and snap it and turn it, and it'll snap out. You fart with that a little bit, and you'll get it out. And this piece just threads into a receptacle inside here. It was the original hose. So I said, oh wow, that was easy. I was able to turn that and pull it out. So the hose comes out, you screw it in this way, you take it off this end, and then that little plastic piece on this end unscrews. Again, we're not going to get into the details. But what I wanted to show you was some of the weird things about this, taking it apart. You have to take this apart. You take this off first, and this is a cover, and all this in there is a connector with 3 wires. You have to lift the connector and slide it out, and that gives you about 3 or 4 inches of slack. So when you pull this, you have enough slack to work with in the wires, the 3 wires, because the 3 wires come through here, through a little raceway. You can just barely see it there, and down in here, past the wheels and into the motor. Well, when I pulled this apart, they really didn't give you enough slack. They should have coiled up some wire up in here, you know, but they didn't. So I ended up cutting the wires, 3 wires, and I said I'll just fix it up later with some liquid electrical tape or some heat shrink tubing. And I pulled the wires through, and I got this all apart. The next thing was, because I was making adapters, these couldn't just screw in easily without tearing this apart. Plus I had torn it apart. So if you do have to tear it apart all the way to the knuckle, this was weird. This had a little plastic cover on it. It looked, you know, like, didn't like it did anything. But I noticed, I said, when I tried to take this apart, I couldn't get this part to come out. And it turned out they put a plastic piece over this for 2 screws, and I put the plastic piece. I had to break it to get it out. but there's a screw there and screw there. You take this out, and this little piece comes out, and then on the other side, I'm not going to flip it, there's a screw that you take out. That's simple. That screw is visible. And then you pry it, and you can get the whole knuckle out, and the whole assembly comes out. So that's the weird thing, is if you could do this with the original hose, or if you make the adapter, now that I know, you probably don't have to tear it apart as much as I did. You probably won't have to tear apart that, twist knuckle there. But I just wanted to show you it is possible, and if they tell you to buy the whole unit, don't. There are places online that I believe sell this hose. I didn't want to risk it. I just said, hey, let me see if I can make it myself. It was a little harder because I didn't have the right hose, but I just screwed this into my bigger hose, screwed that in there, screwed that into the adapter on that end, and it was that simple. So I know this is just an overview. If you want to see how it's all done and how I did it in detail, I will make you a video, but I'd like you to subscribe just so I'm doing that, because it's going to take me some time and it's going to be a lot of headache to show you how this thing comes apart. But if you have any questions, send me a message and I can walk you through it or talk about it. Thank you.